Zedric Zed Malone was an unusually well-preserved zombie, the sort who moisturized his desiccated elbows with artisanal bone marrow balm and insisted on sustainably sourced maggot exfoliant. While most of the undead shambled through deserted malls in tattered khakis, Zed curated outfits from thrift shops, pairing sequined disco shirts with moth-eaten cravats that gave him the aura of a decayed dandy. The day he glued rhinestones to the stubborn nail still lodged through his left temple, he realized two things. First, never underestimate the power of bedazzling, and second, reputations can rise even after death. By the time his brain cell count dropped to single digits, Zed already had 8.2 million necrogram followers who tuned in for Poutre de Poche tutorials. Yet the restless hum inside his chest told him he was meant for more than micro-influencer fame. He coveted the catwalk, the hiss of flashbulbs, and the chance to redefine haute couture from the grave up. He headed to New York's meatpacking district because where else does a tastefully dressed corpse feel at home? Just in time for Fashion Week. Getting a foot in the industry was hard. Keeping the foot on required a staple gun. Zed's first stop was the lobby of Vogue Apocalyptic, the magazine rumored to showcase styles so cutting-edge they occasionally severed an artery. He dragged a steamer trunk full of his most outlandish looks, evening wear made from unwound cassette tapes, capes cut from shower curtains, and his pièce de sauce, a clutch purse sculpted from a repurposed hamster skull. Still, editors brushed him off with polite grunts that mirrored his own. Cute gimmick, one smirked, but we already have sustainability covered. Last season, a designer crocheted sweaters out of Dryerland. Trudging out, Zed nearly lost hope, until inspiration quite literally slapped him in the face. A crow dropped something from an overhead perch, which landed with a splat against his cheek. He peeled it off, a small, grayish fragment of cerebral matter. Likely scavenged from a nearby med school dumpster. Strange business card, he thought, but it sparked the wildest idea he'd ever had that didn't involve chasing joggers. Brains were organic, plentiful, and squishy enough to mold. Could the world handle neurological accessories? Only one way to find out. He sprint shuffled to his studio, a converted crypt in Greenwood Cemetery with excellent cross-ventilation, and began prototyping. First came the brain beret, a petite slice of frontal lobe cured in air-dry resin, perched jauntily at a Parisian tilt. Next, he fashioned the cerebellum clutch, perfect for evening soirees or disorienting a mugger when swung. His PA, actually de resistance, was the synapse scarf, strands of optic nerve braided together like macrame, dyed sunset pink with beet juice. Because he vowed no mine was wasted, Zed marketed them as recycled think pieces. The problem, of course, was sourcing. Even the most ethical morgues frowned on handing out leftover noggins. So Zed launched the Genius Give Back program. He posted ads near Ivy League campuses. Donate your brain to fashion. Leave a stylish legacy. A surprising number of grad students signed the consent forms, probably for the merch bag, tote printed with "Use your head, then let me use it." It wasn't technically illegal. The paperwork would kick in only post-mortem. In the meantime, he scrounged discards from zombie detox centers, facilities where the newly undead attempted to kick the habit of, well, human habit. Soon his dusty showroom brimmed with gray matter in pickle jars, labeled like fine wines. 2003 neurosurgeon, aged with Merlot spillage. 2015 stand-up comedian, notes of irony and caffeine. While crafty, he hummed old Britney Spears hits through glottal folds that sounded like a garbage disposal wrestling a clarinet, but creativity flowed. By dawn, he'd photographed the full line, uploaded it to Necrogram, and waited. The reaction was nuclear. Comments ranged from, "Slay, King of Decay," to, "Is it dishwasher safe?" to, "I hope this is CGI because I'm eating." Influencers scrambled for exclusives. The undead community hailed him as an eco-warrior, finally a market for the most disposable organ besides the appendix. And yet, virality does not equal legitimacy in couture. For that, he needed runway validation. Enter L'Enfer Mode, an underground fashion spectacle rumored to pop up each season in a different condemned building. The next show would commandeer an abandoned insane asylum on Staten Island. Getting an invite required either nepotism, sorcery, or divine bribery. Zed had none of those, but he did have a semi-detached ear from a retired supermodel perfect for mailing in a velvet box with the note, "Heard you might enjoy something extraordinary." The organizers accepted. Rehearsals proved challenging. Zombie models are notoriously stiff, and not in the empowering own your rigid angles way. To loosen them up, Zed hired a choreographer who specialized in interpretive staggering. She coached the cast, rotate shoulders, drop jaw, smolder. Meanwhile, living models complained about the smell. Zed diffused essential oils, cedarwood to mask decomposition, lavender for calm, and a hint of formaldehyde for authenticity. Everyone signed a waiver acknowledging possible accidental nibbles. Backstage on show night felt like the afterlife's answer to Studio 54. Makeup artists blended concealer shades called Death Warmed Over and Parchment Vein. Hairstylists teased faded scalps until tufts resembled cotton candy spun from nightmares. Zed paced, one foot occasionally detaching and clacking off. He kept crazy glue in his pocket next to breath mints he no longer needed, but chewed for the retro crunch. The audience adorers, buyers, rubberneckers filled the hall, sitting on row benches fashioned from repurposed padded cells. At precisely 10:31 p.m., chosen because 10:30 is passé, the lights cut, and a single spotlight illuminated the runway's cracked tiles. A heartbeat bassline thumped, then devolved into syncopated brainwave beeps. A model emerged wearing the brain beret paired with a translucent vinyl trench that revealed skeletal shoulder pads. Cameras flashed, audible gasps. One blogger fainted. Zed couldn't tell if from delight or anemia, but the reaction was perfect. Look after look delivered shock therapy. The cerebellum clutch popped under strobes like gelatinous fireworks. The synapse scarf slithered over collarbones, glistening as if still firing electrical impulses. With each turn, Zed's manifesto echoed from overhead speakers. Mind fashion, literally. Halfway through, a living model lost her nerve, shrieked, and sprinted off, leaving the zombie behind her to improvise a pirouette that ended in mild head detachment. Accidental genius, critics later said, symbolizing the fragility of consciousness. For the finale, Zed strode out, draped in an orchestra of gray organ jewelry, each piece connected by gold-plated spinal cord chain links. He raised his arms, scattered brain matter chimed like macabre wind bells. The crowd erupted. Reviews the next morning were brain-splattered love letters. WWD declared, Zed Malone takes cerebral chic to glorious extremes. Carrie's Bradshaw meets Mary Shelley. Elle called it a mind-blowing triumph and even credited him for locally sourced cognition. PETA attempted a protest until they realized humans weren't protected under their remit, then pivoted to selling t-shirts that read, "Leave heads undread unless they're willing." Orders poured in from boutique concept stores, celebrities, and one eccentric monarch who wanted matching brain epaulets for his royal corgis. Success, though, breeds complications. First came the cease and desist from the American Neurological Association complaining about flippant usage of vital organs. Zed responded with a gift basket, a bouquet of spinal cords arranged around a handwritten note. Lighten up your loss is the world's gloss. Legal counsel advised, maybe not. Next, black market scavengers started raiding medical facilities, hoping to sell brains at designer markup. Zed, horrified at the unethical supply chain, partnered with certified decomposition farms Spacious Meadows, where donors could naturally return to the earth, minus the cerebral portion destined for fashion stardom. The branding wrote itself, field range, free-range thinkers. Simultaneously, rival designers attempted to co-opt the movement. One label premiered kidney clutches, another touted pancreas pendants. The market flooded with knockoff organs encased in plastic. Zed refused to be deluded. He needed the next big concept, one that would prove he wasn't just a one-man wonder. Inspiration struck when his zombie apprentice, Lulu, accidentally left a brain sample next to a Bluetooth speaker overnight. Vibrations molded the tissue into sculptural waves. Zed realized brains were like clay, responding to frequency. He experimented with dubstep, bossa nova, even whale songs, each track producing unique folds. Soon he had sound sculpted Cerebra, each accompanied by the playlist that shaped it, downloadable via QR code stamped on the jar. It was the first accessory that came with a soundtrack and a mild supernatural hum. For Paris Fashion Week, he took things a synapse further. Instead of the traditional runway, he staged an immersive brain boulangerie. Guests entered a faux bakery where shelves displayed brains in pastry boxes. The models wore chef whites splattered with chartreuse viscera. They kneaded gray dough under heat lamps while a narrator whispered recipes. One part genius, two parts whimsy, bake until existential. In the finale, the ovens opened to reveal hats that resembled soufflés, but were of course cured cortexes puffed to perfection. The French custodians of both cuisine and couture were scandalized into adoration. Vogue Paris hailed it the most delicious surrealism since Dalai stuck a lobster on a telephone. By now, Zed's brand Mind Over Matter employed entire teams. Preservation artisans, ethical acquisition officers, synaptic colorists who specialized in dyeing neural tissue Pantone matched to red carpet gowns, and a PR department trained to deflect zombie stereotypes. Their slogan, "He doesn't want your brains, he wants your blessing." Sales skyrocketed, investors died to get in, three literally from excitement, providing more raw material. Zed established scholarships for living art students, paid in shares of future post-mortem cranial licensing. Of course, every empire faces rebellion. A grassroots movement called Heads Up Humanity accused him of glamorizing death. They staged demonstrations outside showrooms carrying props shaped like bleeding skulls, a gift shop win for Zed, who bought them wholesale to add authenticity to window displays. Still, negative press threatened to infect the brand. In a live debate hosted by a late-night talk show, Zed squared off against Dr. Felicia Rondeau, a neuroethicist who also sold brain-shaped soaps. She argued, "Consent gets murky after death." Zed countered, "Darling, consent is filed in triplicate. Mine was filed 5 times, my frontal lobe just forgot where." The audience howled, ratings soared. The host thanked them both and gifted everyone brain beret keychains. Yet the climax of Zed's saga unfolded not on TV, but at the Met Gala, whose theme that year was afterlife aesthetics. He was invited as co-chairman alongside Rihanna and a hologram of Alexander McQueen's pet pheasant. With stakes so high, he vowed to create the single most unforgettable accessory, the twin hemisphere tiara constructed from a Nobel laureate's preserved right brain fused to a chess grandmaster's left, symbolizing intellect and strategy in eternal dialogue. The brains remained electronically stimulated, producing faint phosphorescent flickers. The tiara required refrigeration, a challenge solved by integrating micro-cooling coils disguised as Swarovski crystals. As a backup, he carried a pocket sandwich bag of ice. Red carpet night arrived, paparazzi lost their collective minds, photographing celebrities in spiderweb gowns and tombstone tuxedos. But silence fell when Zed stepped out of the hearse limo. His suit, tailored from recycled morgue curtains, rippled in the breeze like velvet midnight. Atop his head glowed the twin hemisphere tiara, pulsing faint blue light. Reporters fired questions. "Who are you wearing?" He replied, "A polymath and a checkmated champion." The flashes turned the tiara into a strobing crown of thought. Inside the museum, attendees clustered around Zed like moths chasing an existential flame. The Piazza conversation was the tiara's occasional twitch, suggesting its owners were debating quantum theory. Rihanna asked if it came in child sizes. Zed promised a mini version built from prodigy brains, once they were done using them, of course. The curator of the Costume Institute approached, half horrified, half enamored, and proposed a retrospective. From rigor to runway, the Zed Malone story, an entire wing dedicated to cerebral couture. The Smithsonian called minutes later requesting touring rights. Zed agreed on one condition: The souvenir shop must sell gummy brain rings. If you can't beat capitalism, he said, make it bite-sized. In the afterglow, Zed retired to his crypt loft, sipping fermented beet kombucha from a trophy shaped like gray matter Oprah. Success was sweet, though technically he couldn't taste. Lulu burst in waving the latest Financial Frights cover. Zed Malone creates billion-dollar no-brainer. Beneath the headline, an infographic mapped his journey from cemetery chic to neurological empire. Zed chuckled, a rasping wheeze like a wind instrument losing patience. He gazed at the tiara, now resting on a mannequin head. Donor, unnamed philosopher. The pulses had slowed, the brains were gently settling into dignified retirement. A flicker of melancholy surprised him. A memory fragment, maybe, or a phantom echo. He'd started this voyage to prove a zombie could contribute creativity rather than carnage. Along the way, he'd commodified thought itself. Was that brilliance or blasphemy? Hard to say when most of your moral compass dissolved years ago. Yet the fashion world kept begging for more. He wondered, could he expand beyond brains, perhaps marrow marqueterie furniture or cardiac couture with beating heart brooches synchronized to Wi-Fi? The possibilities were as infinite as the graveyard. A sudden knock rattled the crypt door. Standing outside were representatives from NASA's Astro Fashion Lab. They offered him a commission to design spacesuits for the upcoming Mars Necropolis mission, requiring garments that could cushion astronauts against cosmic radiation while doubling as statement pieces at zero-gravity cocktail parties. Materials brief, lightweight, durable, ethically novel. Zed tapped his polished jawbone. He had just the idea meteorite-infused skull helmets lined with lunar gray matter foam. I'll call it Galaxy of the Mind, he mused. The NASA reps gulped, half in awe, half in anticipatory indigestion. They needed prototypes in 6 weeks. Zed grinned, lips pulling taut like drawstrings on a corpse bag. Time to revive a few old brains, he quipped. Lulu handed him his planner, pages beautifully embossed with the phrase, "Seize the Gray." Dates filled quickly with morgue tours, lab visits, and music sessions to sound sculpt interstellar cerebra. The undead never sleep, so shifts were easy. As they set to work, Zed reflected on how far style had evolved since humans first draped themselves in animal skins. Now, even in death, especially in death, one could still be part of an ever-changing narrative stitched together by audacity. For a trendy zombie, the runway was just an open grave, with better lighting. He raced a half-decayed toast to innovation, to ethical exhumations, and to whatever quivering frontiers awaited his fashionable, if partially fermented, mind. And somewhere in a luxury vault, the twin hemisphere tiara pulsed one last time, as if tipping an intellectual hat to the madness it had inspired.